Good morning or afternoon or whenever you're listening to this. But today we are just going to go over like the basics of phylogeny, which means, next slide, evolutionary classifications of organisms. So as you can see in the picture above me, it's kind of like a family tree of a bunch of different things that aren't actually really related to each other. So if you look at the tree up above me right now, you can actually see different organisms that are closely related to each other. And some of them you might be like, come on, Mrs. Weeks, you are crazy. How are a dog, a pig, a cow, and a horse more closely related to each other than maybe like a sheep is or something like that? Because we typically think of like farm animals as being all together. But this one up above me is looking at amino acid sequences. So we can get very, very detailed. And actually, dogs and pigs are pretty closely related to each other. And that's one of the reasons why people think that pigs are actually one of the most intelligent animals, which is kind of cool. Because dogs are really smart. Some dogs are really smart. Some are cute. Um, so we can actually look at those different things and look at who's related, who's not related. Okay. And if you look over, oh, other side. And if you look over at the other tree that's made down there, we have like a sea lamprey and a sea bass, an antelope, a bald eagle, and an alligator. And what we're seeing there is it's actually showing us how those animals are related with derived characters. So, what that means is this chart that I made of just some random animals, and I'm just like, all right, that stuff looks good. Um, get rid of that. So, phylogeny classifies animals based on DNA evidence, and sometimes it can use traits as well. So, the one that I made right here, this side, is based off of traits. So, the traits that we have are cephalization, which means having a melon, having a head, jawbone, having hair, and bipedal, so walking on two legs. So what I have there is a human, dog, worm, sea sponge, and fish. So I just kind of took an animal, different animals from all different realms of being animals. So all of them except for sponges have cephalization. So that means that there's some sort of nerve, something like a not necessarily even a brain, but just some sort of nerve net in a head region. Okay. The next one I looked at is a jawbone. So worms don't have jawbones because that would be terrifying land. Um, Fish don't have hair, so the only ones that have hair are humans and dogs. And bipedal is human. So we walk on 2 feet. That's what bipedal means. So the way that we organize this evolutionarily into a table is just like the table down there. So this is actually a phylogenetic tree or a cladogram. So they're used kind of interchangeably. They're slightly different when you get to higher levels of science, but for you guys, they're kind of interchangeable. So what we do here is we go up that big backbone that we see there. And as we go up that backbone, we get to cephalization. That's our first node. Okay. So everything that comes after of that has cephalization. Then we get to jawbone. Everything after that has cephalization and a jawbone. Okay. Move myself here. Okay. Then we get to hair. Everything after hair has cephalization, jawbone, and hair. So we can also do this with DNA evidence because we looked through like the A's, T's, G's, and C's of our DNA code. We looked at the different amino acids, and we know that some amino acids you can actually sub in different amino acids in your proteins, and you still get the same thing. So we can actually look at those changes and those differences and put those into a cladogram like this to figure out how closely or distantly related something is based on DNA evidence. So on our next page, here are just some, move myself down here. Here are just some like definitions to use. So in this, our sea sponge is considered an out group. So what an out group actually is it's an organism that has basically nothing in common with anything else. Okay, it's the black sheep of the whole family, but we use it as like our base. Like, okay, a sea sponge is the base animal. It is the simplest thing that we consider an animal, so we're going to use that as our start. It's like our primer. Okay, and if we see back on the very first slide, The zebrafish was our out group. That was the one that had the least in common with everything else, but that's like our starter point. Nodes, like I said before, are all the things that are in red. So those are traits. And then the last thing is a clade. So a clade, imagine this whole thing up there like a tree. If I make one cut, everything that falls off when you make that one cut is a clade. So that's like one group that is closely related to everything else. So a worm and a fish, there's nowhere I can make a cut and just get a worm and a fish in this picture. So a worm and a fish would not be a clade. However, a fish, dog, and human could be a clade because I could make one cut right at jawbone and fish, dog, and human would all fall off in a branch together. So that's how you tell if something's a clade or not. So hopefully these definitions will help you do your homework for today and all of that good stuff. And I hope you guys join us for our Google Meet.